We wanted to have that counter narrative to how it's happening. So with our allies, we formed a language access network. And these are allies, community organizations that we had been working with in the immigrants' rights movement. It was very natural. It was a very natural fit for us to come together. And so our focus has been on outreach and empowerment. So we do community education, and we know that it is hard to reach out to a community that doesn't understand their rights. Many of them are not aware of the language access ordinance. They're scared to file complaints, but we have to get them on board with us, and so we really emphasize a lot of just basic grassroots organizing and community workshops. Something that has been more fun that we are doing is what we're calling a spot checks program, and this folds into our work to provide that counter narrative. It's something like a secret shopper program, and so we have limited English proficient or monolingual volunteers, community members, some of them are staff from our organizations, and we train them on what the requirements are of the language access ordinance, and then they're given a checklist. And so over the phone, or they go in person to a city office and they see, does this agency actually comply with what the requirements are under the language access ordinance? So I think it has been empowering for them because they spend 15 minutes out of their day to go to a city agency, and then they get to document it. And as they're going through the process pretending to access services, they know in their head that, oh, this agency is not following the law, I know what the law is. So we're still in the process of that, and we'll be summarizing the findings and sharing them. But another thing that we have really found is the technical assistance part. We are starting to look at the Department of Human Resources, and I haven't shared many of the stories, but there's a lot of, I only have 5 minutes, but there are a lot of human stories that come to our offices, and I think that it's really what motivates us to do this work. But I'll just share that we've heard about problematic issues within certain agencies. So for example, the San Francisco Police Department, they have a seniority system, and so depending on how senior you are, you get to pick which beat you walk. So if you are Chinese speaking, but maybe you don't want to be assigned to Chinatown, you could be placed somewhere where there are no Chinese immigrants. And so that has been a problem. So we are looking at what are the policies and procedures within city departments to ensure that if there are resources, that they're actually allocated to where the need is. And I just want to speak very briefly that I think in thinking about today and how we've thought about the legacy of law, it has been interesting for me as a law graduate coming from UCLA and really feeling so empowered by laws that exist and really the legacy at CAA. I watch our anniversary videos and people talk about going to the Supreme Court, and I get goosebumps because this is what I went to law school for. It was to enforce the law. And then I come to work and it's this very unglamorous and it's appealing to the board of supervisors and the political vulnerability and whether or not they think that this is important this budget cycle. And so I'm thinking, we have constantly been reevaluating, how do we appeal to people's interest in language access, and we've been shifting to this immigrant integration framework, and to some extent it has had some traction when we talk to elected officials and we say, changing demographics, there's this inevitability aspect of, new immigrants coming, how do we prepare ourselves, how do we become a global city? And it all just seems so ridiculous that we're appealing to their fears of how do I have more voters on board, how do I have people who are going to vote in my district? And so I'm just, I'm hoping that as I continue this work at CAA that we can really switch back to the framework that Lau really left us, which was the civil rights framework. And I think that when we shift too much to immigrant integration, we're really losing that aspect of justice, and I don't ever want that to be lost, because that's really what the experience of our clients and our community members are.
Fantastic. We now have about 20 minutes, a little more, before Henry takes over for the closing plenary, the time you've all been waiting for, questions. And I would like to exercise a little affirmative action toward that back part of the seating where the people seem younger and maybe won't speak quite as easily as some of the old folks. But if anyone has questions, we would.
I was hoping this would be mentioned, but what impact did Lau versus Nichols have on the 1975 Diana case? which affected students with disabilities, students being tested in languages they didn't understand. Can you address that just a little bit?
I'm not an expert except to say, yes, the whole notion of validity with regard to a national origin. So let me take a step back. One of the key things, and Jay Stanley Pottinger explained this morning, is you have to first posit that language is an element of national origin, right? And then you get to the question of validity. So if you're going to give people tests that are not